Hello chess fans! Today's video I'm going to show you an illustrative game I played against the Khan Sicilian at a recent tournament. The tournament was the Canadian University Chess Championship, and I was against around a 1900 rated opponent who told me later that they were actually rated 2100 in their Quebecois rating. So not someone that I can take lightly, and someone that definitely put up a good fight in this tournament. Okay, so I started off the game with e4. My opponent decided to go for c5, and here I went for knight c3. Now, there's no real difference between going knight c3 and knight f3 for the move order I was going for, but it just allows you to be more flexible and kind of be more tricky. My opponent played e6 and I played knight f3. And yeah, as you can see, it just didn't matter which one I went for first. I was just going to go with the other one next. Here my opponent went for a6, and I decided to not go for d4 right away because I just wanted to test him out to see what he's going to play. Instead, I go for g3, and here after b5, d4 takes, we get sort of the open Sicilian position. And if you're wondering how you can get this out of knight f3, so if you go knight f3, your opponent goes e6, you can go d4, takes with the knight, a6, knight c3, b5 is not a very common move. A much more common move here is queen c7. But for example, using my move order with like this sort of move order, if they go queen c7 here, it might be considered less accurate because I don't really have to commit to d4. For example, if they go knight c6 here and like, I don't know, knight f6, I can go for something like rook e1, d6, just wait a long time with d4 until I really feel ready. So instead of that, they went for b5, which is a little bit more forcing, and here bishop b7. And I went for, okay, they're attacking the pawn here, and they're threatening b4, so I have to defend it with bishop g2. And here my opponent went knight f6. So at this point, both of us had played pretty quickly, and my opponent kept on smiling. So I had a feeling that my opponent had actually looked at this, or they knew the position quite well. And I was a little bit scared because I haven't really looked at this position too much. I've played this position over the board a few times, and I've played this position in blitz many times. But I've never actually really looked at the lines quite deep. I usually just trust my intuition. And when my opponent knew the theory, I was a little bit worried. So now I know here there's sort of a few moves that you can play. You can either go castles, which is a very well-known gambit. There was a game recently by Dina Belenkaya in this move order when she managed to beat a GM very quickly. So it's definitely a very trappy line. But the problem is that castles, if black knows maybe 20 moves of theory or 30 moves of theory, it just becomes equal. And if you're wondering why castles is a gambit, it's because after b4, knight a4, this pawn is just hanging. So yeah, you can't really play this gambit. Or sorry, you can play this, but it's just a gambit. So instead of that, okay, the threat is b4. So I was just thinking for a little bit, and I thought, okay, I might as well just stop b4. I went a3. And for example, if my opponent still continues with b4, I was thinking just takes, and now castles is just way improved because now my rook's open. And for example, if they try to go for the same thing like this, I can even have bishop a3. So I wasn't saying this is the exact line. The engine actually doesn't like bishop a3 right away. It likes queen f3 first, but this is sort of what I was thinking. Just you can never castle. And so now there's no sort of gambit. So b4 is sort of a little bit unplayable. And so instead of that, my opponent decided to go for queen c7, which I think is the most natural move, developing the queen to put pressure on the knight and also covering the bishop. So there's no tactics with e5 in the future. For example, if I was castled, I had to have the tactic with e5 because I'm attacking both the bishop and the knight. But now the bishop's defended. Okay, so instead of that, now I went for castles. And here you have to be careful. Again, if you go with bishop e7, then e5 comes, and if you take here, I take here, and if you take here, I take here, and I should be up the exchange now or something. Or wait, what? What if he just goes here? Okay, this happens, and then okay, the line's really complex. Even though I'm down the exchange, the engine says I'm completely winning. But yeah, you just have to be careful about e5, and regardless of whether bishop e7 and e5 is actually playable, I think generally as black, my opponent just played d6 pretty quickly just to stop e5 ideas. Now if here you can just take, and then the bishop's not hanging. Okay. So here I decided to go for rook e1, defending my pawn, and my opponent decided to go for bishop e7, and here I played a little bit of a strange move. So take a few seconds to see if you can really find the only move for white, because clearly here white has an advantage. I'm up on development, I'm more developed than my opponent, and my opponent's setup is actually a little bit suspect. But if I give them castles, knight d7, knight c5, or knight b6, knight c4, I mean, it's clear that black's better here. So you have to be very careful here as white. So what is the plan? What am I trying to do here? Take a few seconds to see if you can figure it out. So yeah, pause the video if you didn't find the move. But basically, in human play, there's two plans that people have gone for here. The first is with g4 to try to attack. I feel this is way too early because, for example, black doesn't even have to castle. They can, for example, even go h6 and there's just no threat. Just leave the king in the center. Maybe even go knight c6 and castle queenside. But yeah, g4 is not really a good move. So instead I went for a4. And it's just like playing a3 and then a4 is just really weird. But if you guys remember my queen sacrifice video, I actually also play this a3 and a4 idea. So it's an idea I actually know very well, to play a3 and then play a4. So here, there's a plethora of moves here for black. Mainly just two actually. So they can either take the pawn or go b4, because if they leave it, they're just going to lose the pawn and they can't really defend it with like queen b6 because there's already two attackers. So if they go b4, sometimes the idea is here you sacrifice a knight with d5, but here they can just castle quickly and there's no knight f5 to pressure the bishop. So instead of that, my plan was to go knight a2, attacking here, and after a5 you play this move c3, and after takes, basically white is positionally almost completely winning here. What's going to happen is this knight goes here, followed by, okay, let's say black plays here. We could go knight here, queen here, and we'd go bishop here. And then, for example, if e5 here and castles, you can easily take, I guess now they have knight takes, but for example, if they had to play bishop takes, then you can go knight d5 next, and it's a very, very pleasant position. And this might be sort of what you expect as like a bind. So after a4, my opponent took, which was the right move, and my opponent played this pretty quickly. So I was like, I don't know if my opponent actually is still in theory or they know what they're doing really well, but they told me that they kind of knew this idea that you can't really play b4. So here I decided to play knight takes a4, and rook takes a4 is actually probably a little bit better because it's more active. But okay, I need to get a drink of water, sorry. That's a blooper. Okay, but here my opponent decided to play knight b7, which I think is a good move. And here finally is where my impatient attitude kind of kicked in, because I kind of really thought that my opponent did something wrong. And I was just like, I really want to punish. I feel like I should have an advantage somehow, but I just really don't here. And I just really needed to calm down. And what I needed to do was play this weird move, rook a3, which the idea is rook c3, just because if knight c5, then you can go rook c3 and you're threatening b4, which is just like absolutely crazy. Because also you're always scared of d5 opening up an attack on the rook. But yeah, apparently this is what I should have done. And instead of that, I decided to play a waiting move. I played queen e2. So queen e2, other than rook a3, there's really no like clear move that improves my position. This just blunders a fork. The bishop doesn't belong on g5. The bishop doesn't want to go here. The bishop doesn't want to go here. That loses defense of the knight. So I don't want to move my bishop. And I guess if I'm not improving my rook, I don't see what else to improve. I played queen e2, which is a mild improving move. Like, okay, yes, I'm defending this more, and yes, I'm attacking this in the future, but I'm also relinquishing defense of my knight. So it's not really clear what this does, but my idea was if castles, that I was going to play this move g4. Now, yeah, now you see sort of, I knew g4 was an idea in other positions. I knew a4 was the better idea, but now I got impatient and wanted to play g4 when it's really not necessary. And here's where I think that I kind of played on human psychology. So most players, they just do not like being attacked. Like nobody really likes being attacked. Especially if they're not up any material, they're just like very scared. So here when I played this move g4, my opponent was like, he just did not even consider g4 and he just thought it was a good move. And I thought it was a good move too, obviously, that's why I played it. But yeah, I think we both clearly overestimated this move. Here I think knight e5, and this is what I was sort of thinking. I was thinking I would go g5 here and f4, and after knight g6, I was thinking queen f2. This is sort of where I ended my calculation. I thought, oh, I'm much better. Like if he goes like, I don't know, like rook here, I can go for like f5 and open up the king side. I think my opponent was scared of this too. Here we both overlooked e5. And yeah, this should just be quite good for black. So yeah, that's what I thought my opponent should have done after the game. But they played knight c5, and actually knight c5 was also a good move. So I think I underestimated this. So here my opponent took, I played knight b3. And here's where I would say my opponent actually like made the first mistake of the game. Up to this point, I think my opponent has played pretty much perfect. I mean, yeah, pretty much perfect. And I'm slightly worse, and I've not played it very well with g4, like way too overambitious. But here, I think I told my opponent after the game that they really had to go for a5. And the idea is you're going to just play a4. My pieces are just so misplaced. Like, I literally cannot do anything. It's maybe why, like, yeah, I have to go knight b3. So instead, after a5, like, okay, after a5, a4, my position is bad. Apparently, I'm supposed to go knight d2, knight c4, for example, a4 and knight c4. But even here, it doesn't really look pleasant, and this pawn is really, really annoying. This minority attack creating this weakness here, and I have no attack of my own. Here, black should definitely be better. But instead, my opponent played this move, rook a7, which even at the time, like, I just completely did not understand this move at all. Obviously, on knight a5, he wanted to meet it with bishop a8. And for example, if he went rook b8 after knight a5, bishop a8, I have knight c4 with the tempo here. And so his idea with rook a7 was to guard it. And like only after him playing it, like, did I actually even consider that idea. But even still, like if you have to play as ridiculous a move as rook a7 to keep defense of your a6 pawn, like, it's just ridiculous. So he definitely should have played a5. That would have been very bad for me there. But here I played knight a5. He went bishop a8. I'm not even sure if my idea is actually to take here. Like, I don't think I honestly would. My knight's just better on c4, but he defended it anyways. Knight c4, and here knight d7. And so knight d7 was a very good move from my opponent after making rook a7. And here, I spent like 20 minutes. And what happened is I ended up just getting way, way, way too impatient. And I kind of miscalculated. So here, the move I really wanted to play, and the best move according to Engine, is bishop d2. And the idea is to prevent knight b6, because if knight b6, then okay, we have this pin and we win an exchange at least. So instead of that, after here, I think I thought my opponent would go like bishop f6 or something, and then I could go g5, bishop d4, like c3. What was I can't remember my exact line, but I thought something like that. And then I basically just rejected this move for just no reason whatsoever. I just really wanted to play rook a3, rook h3, and g5, and just made him on the h file. But yeah, I think I just completely underestimated my opponent played knight b6. Like, at this point, I kind of just realized that I'd fumbled my advantage a little bit, and I was just kind of annoyed. If I continue with the same plan like this, I'm trying to remember, I think my opponent can, like, literally just ignore it. For example, like here, like covering that, and if I try to get here anyways, they go e5, and if I still try to go here, they have h5, and I can't even take because I'm pinned. So I just realized that it was way too slow, and thus I just played a bad move here. I think I really had to go with takes, and then go g5, going for that, but instead of that, I switched plans and went bishop a3, which is just like, why would you play rook a3 if then you're blocking the rook with bishop e3? It makes no sense. And here my opponent punished me accordingly. And after queen c4, like, I've completely lost all the advantage back again after rook a7. Here, all my opponent had to do was just go rook b8, and then the position is just completely equal. Like, we're just going to trade pawns, and we both have the bishop pair, but like, his bishop pair is just as active as mine. Okay, so here instead, he played this move, bishop d6, which the engine does not say is a mistake. But I gave it this mistake tag because I think that the idea behind bishop d6 was just, from my opponent, it was just like, oh, this is just a free move that I can throw in. Like, it's just an easy move. But here, like, it ended up costing him the entire game. Like, as much as that sounds crazy, like, if you look at this position, I'm sure you can sort of start to see sort of the tactical vision of why this move might lose the whole game. But yeah, this move just gives up the advantage because after h3, the move rook b8 is no longer possible. And you might be asking, wait, what? How does, like, the insertion of bishop d6 and h3 make rook b8 impossible? And I'm sure that's what my opponent was probably thinking too, because just like, maybe he was thinking about rook b8 in this position, but he's just like, oh, let's just throw bishop d6 in. But now I have rook takes a6, and then, excuse me, sorry. And then you might be thinking, like, wait, what difference does that make? Like, why don't you just play after rook b8, rook d6, right? Just rook takes b2, and then, okay, there's no more line. But is there? After rook takes a6, here my opponent probably just has to go here, and just go bishop b7, and after queen c4, he's just down a pawn. And my opponent didn't want to do that, obviously, so he played rook takes b2 in a few seconds, and then you're thinking, wait, what's the difference? Is it not the same position? No, it's not. e5! Wow, that's like a really nice move. I was like, thankfully he finally blundered. Like, I was really annoyed that he was playing so good. And I calculated e5, and I calculated all the way to a win from e5, actually. And there was multiple better wins in between that I just kind of overlooked because I calculated a win from here. But yeah, I was pretty happy to find this move. And finally now, after, if you're wondering about all the tactics, if he moves here, I just take the bishop. That's the whole idea. Now the rook defends the bishop, and after from something like takes, I don't know, queen takes e5, like bishop back, I'm simply just up a bishop. So instead of that, he took here. I took here, attacking the bishop and this bishop. He took here. I took here, attacking the queen. He went queen c6. And here, the really important move to see. If you didn't see this move, you don't win. See if you can find the move. If you didn't see e5 earlier, the move is d7. And yeah, this is the move that you just had to see. Because if you take the queen, checkmate. If you take the pawn, I take the bishop, and I'm up a bishop again. And if you do what he did in the game, rook b8. So take another few seconds to see if you can find the move. So I actually ended up not finding the move. Like previously I calculated my move, and my move is also winning. But there's an even better move than the one I played. And I think it's the most obvious move too. Like the most obvious move is like, okay, I want to play d8, right? Play rook d1. Like why didn't I do this? Here, for example, if here, you can play queen a5, queen a8, takes here, and then next takes, and here is coming, and there's nothing that black can do to stop it, to prevent the promotion. So here I'd be completely winning. And that's just a really easy win. But here I literally spend like 10 seconds on queen a5 because I saw it wins. After queen a8, see if you guys can calculate from here, because I saw this all before e5. Like before playing e5, I saw all this line. And see if you can still see the win. So takes, bishop takes, rook d1, rook d8. What's the winning move? You really have to be accurate here. Rook d6. And this is what I think my opponent said that they had missed, is that they no longer have access to bishop c6. If you play here after bishop c6, it's just a complete draw. One way to lose is like this, though. I think this is what my opponent might have thought that I had, and then after this, they just move their bishop here and then take here next. So that's one trick that you might have. But yeah, here after rook d6, there's just no way. My opponent played king f8. I took. He played king e7. I went rook d2. And yeah, here my opponent resigned in lieu of king here. And make sure you don't play like bishop here, because then he can go king e7. So instead, just go g5. And after it takes, now here. And now I win the full rook instead of the exchange. So yeah, that's the end of today's video, guys. If you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe. And if you're my opponent and you're still watching, you played a good game, because I remember I told you that I might make a video on this after. But yeah, that was definitely a good game, and I think the line is really interesting, and so was this game. So I'll see you guys in the next video.